Keep an eye out for these sleepers.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lars, just a quick reminder to all the everydayers out there, no matter where you're getting this podcast, please remember to subscribe, YouTube, wherever else you get it, because just like today, on this Friday, we are going to be bringing you updates throughout the offseason every single day, just like we normally do. So please, the best way to make sure you're up to date with everything going on is by subscribing, because today we're going to have a fun show. We need to talk about basketball, Danny Sprinkle's team, and if they can get back on track as they head to Minnesota on Saturday, another team toward the bottom of the Big Ten. We're also going to talk about some of these Huskies in the NFL draft. Our buddy Alex Katzen was down at the Shrine Bowl, talk some Carson Bruener, a couple other guys that, we think might have a chance to get drafted. But first thing, we've been talking about this one for a while. There are a lot of really underrated prospects in Washington's 2025 class. Are going to be up here for spring practice. And Lars, one guy who I think you and I are both really, really excited about, we saw him taking some layups after a basketball game a few weeks ago, is offensive lineman John Mills.
Not just taking some layups, taking some jump shots.
It was.
Ash and Jake Flores were all shooting threes there. And so actually, you know what? I made the joke to him, and I was like, when the rosters expand, when the basketball rosters expand, Jedd and Danny should have a conversation, because I'm not saying John Mills is 6'11", but he can throw some elbows in the paint. Like, he can move some dudes around. And I will say, not a bad jump shot for an offensive lineman, especially. Like, you look and a little sharp, a little too straight on there, but size, all there. Attitude, all there. Physicality and mindset, all there. And one thing that I know, I think it was your question to Matt Doherty during the early signing day press conference, when he really emphasized getting these offensive and defensive linemen, especially in the spring and in January, to get this winter conditioning going. That is a massive improvement and something that can't go underrated, because you're talking about guys' development. You're getting a bonus 6 months before the season even really gets going in August.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's one of the things that I'm really curious about. We talked about it a little bit earlier this week, where I don't think you or I are going to be holding John Mills to the standard of, hey, we expect this guy to be in the rotation this fall. Should he be held to that? No. You should never hold a true freshman offensive lineman to that standard. But with that being said, it's one of those things where we know what Jedd's plans are for a lot of these offensive linemen. We saw it at Arizona. We might end up seeing it again, depending on how the spring portal works out, depending on how a couple different things go. So if we, get to spring ball and we see John Mills really contributing and really trying to earn a spot on the interior, just something like that, that'd be a lot of fun. And all it does is add depth and size in exactly the position that this roster needs it. When you look at what Damon Williams needs, what this offensive line needs, it's guys like that. Flipping him late in the process from Texas was such a big win, where that's something that can't be understated in all of this. And it's all the reinforcements that you want. And, you look at, maybe why haven't they done more in the December transfer portal, where, they've missed out on a couple of guys. Wendell Moy obviously being the prime example. But when you have somebody who has 4 years of eligibility like John Mills, and maybe you find a way to work him into a game or two this season, redshirt him, and then it's full go in 2026, great. And as you said, it's getting him into the program early that really, really matters.
And the reason why it matters is it's not just the 15 spring practices; it's the 3 months of winter conditioning with Tyler Owens and the new guy Lance that they brought in. Last name is escaping me.
Yeah.
But you're looking at it and thinking, because otherwise, so I guess we should kind of back it. The reason why we're emphasizing the spring here is because most times when you're a senior recruit, you're coming in June. The elite period is in June, then you have the July summer conditioning, and then you get ready for August fall camp. Now you're talking about January, February, March, April, winter conditioning and practices, and then you get a little bit of time off in May, and then you're already ahead of the guys coming in June. And when we're already talking about a position group, and it kind of in a similar way goes along the defensive line, when you think about guys like Caleb Smith, where it's, maybe they probably won't be in the rotation just because they're freshmen and they're not 5 stars, and they're not. And by the way, no slight to any of these guys when we say this. It's just it's so hard to make an impact as a freshman, especially in the trenches. So anytime that you can cut that clock off or start that clock early in this case, that's massive. And I look at a guy like Caleb Smith in that same light of, well, you're not going to need to be playing more than 4 games this year because there's enough bodies on the interior of the defensive line with Ryan Walters, new scheme, and all that, where barring injury, you're not going to have to be thrown in the fire, but we do want you to play because we're going to need to see where you are. And that redshirt freshman year is almost like a junior year because it feels like you're just so far advanced, but you just haven't played yet. And that's why it's so imperative the guys like Caleb Smith, John Mills, and a couple others that we're going to talk about are getting here in January.
Yeah, and one of those guys who was on that list for me was Dominic Macon, where that's, it's all the same things where it's the size, it's the physicality, it's the experience as a wrestler in a position of need at defensive tackle, where that's a guy where I don't expect him to see the field at all this season. I don't. But he's somebody that I'm sure you and I are going to get on here at some point during spring practice and say, hey, for one reason or another, that's somebody who really, really impressed us. And it's because all of these measurables, it's the physicality, it's the intangibles, it's the thing that, you talk about what Matt Doherty was saying with some of these defensive linemen. Those are the kinds of things you look for. That background, I think about Victor Sanchez-Hernandez, another guy who's going to be around for spring ball, as, hey, he's a world-class martial artist. Like, it's those experiences in other sports that will translate to the football field. And that's something I'm really excited about with Dominic Macon in particular, where you and I still want to see Washington go out and win a battle for a Simone Katanga or some of these other high-profile defensive linemen. But getting players like Dominic Macon into the building on a yearly basis is something that's very, very important. And one of the big reasons you and I are so excited for that, along with somebody else like Victor Sanchez-Hernandez, Caleb Smith, is these are the under-the-radar guys who you want to see how good this scouting is. Because it's one thing to say, we watch this guy's high school tape, and you like the tape a lot at the high school level, and then once they get to campus, it's going to look a lot different. So that's something that you and I are really excited to see.
And one guy almost in that similar mold who John Richardson went to go see on Thursday is Donovan Robinson. Another guy we're both very high on. It's a guy where it's, again, you're coming. I think he should be coming in March, right? I think I have that correctly. I don't know if he's on campus right now. Obviously, I don't think he is because John Richardson just went to go visit him. Same thing with Epperson. Jonathan Epperson, again, now he's not underrated because we know who Epperson is. There's no slight to Robinson. Right. But I think of those two, you would say Robinson is the lesser known. And it would not surprise me if we're having this discussion in 2 or 3 years where which one is better. Not because the Epperson doesn't pan out, but I think because Robinson will play above his 3-star ranking and end up giving you the conversation of this is why you go and get the 3 and the 4 because you don't know which one's going to pop. And by the way, when they both pop, now you're playing in the playoffs. So I'm so glad you mentioned him because you talk about scouting and you talk about, hey, I want to see what Jedd Fisch's coaching staff, what their scouting process looks like for certain guys in certain positions. I think he is the single most unique athlete that they have on this roster, where 6'3", 210, 215 can play linebacker, can play safety, return kicks at the high school level, played wide receiver at the high school level, where those are, all the intangibles that you look for on the football field, where being able to do so many different things and play those positions at a high level. Where we're talking about him in terms of underrated players because he's still a 3-star ranked in the 70s in terms of his own position in the country, where you look at just that profile and everything that he brings to the table and say that's shockingly low. Like there's a lot there that I think could be a little bit more emphasized in terms of national rankings, but it is what it is. And you like the evaluation process that went on there. Just like Kamori House.
Yep.
Just exactly like Kamori.
Yep.
Same frame, not exactly same frame, but same everything. By the end of his freshman year, we're going to be talking about why was he not in the 30s? Guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely. But Lars, speaking of just evaluation and everything, some Huskies are being evaluated for the NFL draft. Let's talk about what those prospects look like. Right after a message from our good friends over at Game Time, hitting NFL playoff games is experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans are unmatched. I remember the thrill of seeing my favorite team clinch a playoff win live. It's a memory I'll never forget. This year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff to show you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters. Being there, I've used Game Time Picks to grab some tickets for some upcoming baseball games this regular season, and it couldn't have been easier. I found a super deal that gave me incredible value value for amazing seats, and I can even preview the view from my spot before buying. The all-in pricing is a game changer, no surprise fees to check out. Plus, knowing my tickets are backed by the Game Time guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So, Lars, the guy we need to start with here is Carson Bruener, where you and I we just loved having a relationship with Carson over his time in college, listening to him discuss things the way he did about Washington, the passion he had for the university, everything like that. And I look at it and I say, if I could only choose one Husky in 2025 to get drafted, it would probably end up being Carson Bruener. And he, we're going to have our buddy Alex Katzen on. We're going to have some stuff on our websites about Carson's time at the Shrine Bowl and everything. But he's really showed out. And he's somebody who I really think could be an early day 3 pick.
Yeah, I mean, that was always going to – and it's not that it's necessarily the safest pick, but it's just the one where you look at the frame, you look at the way he played. Again, like I mentioned, top 5 in tackles on defense every single year in his time at Washington, but was only a starter for 1 year. That's a guy that has to get drafted. Like, if he doesn't get drafted, never mind that his father played in the NFL. Never mind that his father is a scout. Like, take all the nepotism out of it. Dude should still get drafted. And you look at it and, played through pain, played through everything. And you notice when Carson wasn't out there for UW, like, it was a little bit different. It wasn't, again, the other thing that kind of in that mold makes me intrigued is what does it say about Alphonzo? Because, like, look, we haven't heard as much about him, but given how he played this season, off of Carson, like, there was no way he doesn't at least earn like a tryout or a shot in the NFL, especially because of his versatility. I know he's a little bit more undersized compared to Carson, but you just look at those two linebackers, and when was the last time UW had, aside from, because I don't think there was two after Eddie, because it was Eddie, and I don't think there was another one.
Dominic Hampton, like he's a linebacker now, so shout out to him for that. Where I'm really excited to see what he's going to do. Just by the way, just off topic there. Shout out to Dom, where he hasn't played much this season with the Washington Commanders, but it's very clear they're really excited about his future. That's like the closest that I would say you can point to in recent seasons. But yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. Like, aside from that, like, you haven't had a dual linebacker drafted in a while at Washington, and so you think about. The reason why I say this and kind of tie them both in together is with what Washington is building in the future, you really hope that both of your linebackers who basically not almost like carried your defense, but let's kind of be real here, played a big part in the defense this past season.
Absolutely.
Get drafted. That's a huge selling point to say, hey, now you guys are the next one's up. Now you're the next one's up. And it helps, the program moving forward. But you also have to think, like, given guys are both 4-year guys, both came back and did everything they could for their school. Zoe maximized himself out. I think Carson always was the guy that was going to be an NFL guy to me, just looking at his frame, background, lineage, all those sorts of things. The one that I wonder, like, where does Zoe fall in all this? Because I think he's the one that can't get forgotten.
So I agree with you there. Steve Belichick's defense helped Alphonzo Tuputala as much as it did anybody this season. Another guy I want to get to in a second. But I'm really glad that he got a chance to play in Steve's scheme this season, because it did exactly what you said. It maximized his potential. It showed that he can do more than one thing. Where I think he fits best in the NFL as an inside linebacker, where I don't know if he's going to end up being somebody that gets drafted, but he's going to find his way onto a roster. I can guarantee you that he'll be playing a lot in the preseason, and somebody's going to say, oh yeah, this guy's really solid. He's really versatile. And it's because of what he was able to do this past season, where he was able to put a whole bunch of outside linebacker tape on his film, where a team is going to look at him and say he might be a little undersized to play outside full time, but he's somebody who can get on the field, line him up all over the formation, and have him do a whole bunch of different things, which was the biggest benefit of having Steve in the building for, even though it was just one season, was a lot of these veteran guys were able to learn that and were able to do a whole bunch of different things that maximize them for this level. Another guy who I don't know if he's going to get drafted, unfortunately, just purely based off his size, but as somebody that deserves a shot at the NFL level, arguably like more than anybody on that we're going to talk about outside of Carson Bruener, just because of who he is and how productive we've seen him be, is Voi Tunuufi, where I've loved watching Voi for the past 4 years, where it was really tough to find him just see him not really find a home for a couple of seasons in terms of on the defense where, he starts as a defensive tackle in 2021, was really productive as a true freshman. And then Kalen Staff moves him outside, where I don't think that was a bad thing, but it just very clearly wasn't his greatest strength. And then he was able to find a role as without a position this season, where it was, we are going to line him up outside. We are going to line him up inside. And when he talked to us over the course of the year, he always talked about, hey, I feel like I'm best at defensive tackle at a 3 technique because that's just where I thrive. And that's unfortunately not going to be the case in terms of he's not going to line up there full time at the NFL level. But if he's able to work his way into a tryout, maybe because I really do think he's going to end up being an undrafted free agent type of player. But if he's able to find his way into a tryout at a rookie minicamp, something like that, he's somebody who's going to impress because of his motor, because of his physicality, because of the different things that he's able to do in the same vein as Alphonzo Tuputala, where it's all the different positions that he can line up at. And I wouldn't be surprised if he made his way onto a roster as well.
I equivalent Voi as a defensive lineman to Miles Bryant as a cornerback.
I can see that.
Undersized, kind of passed over. Have to go the undrafted free agent route, but ends up sticking because of exactly everything you just said, the motor, the production. I mean, if Steve Belichick is like, oh, I got to find a way to get this guy on the field. Like I don't know what he's going to play, but I'm going to have to figure something out because he's too impactful not to play. Those are the type of guys where we look. I mean, for God's sakes, Puka Nacua was a 5th round pick. So
that was an injury thing though.
No. But I'm just saying, there's a lot of times when, for various reasons, guys can kind of fall and do sorts of things and end up popping in their NFL careers. And Voigt's going to exactly be that type of player where no matter what, he'll have at least a 5-year career. Like, he just strikes me as that type of guy where there's no reason. And again, that doesn't mean he's going to lead the league in sacks. He's going to blow up. He's going to be better than Mason Graham. I'm not saying that, but there's a difference between having to fight for a roster spot. Like, Voigt's a solid 40 through 53 guy on a roster where
absolutely
he might not be your top guy. He's not going to be your edge rusher or your go-to edge rusher, but you're going to find a way, and I guarantee it's going to be on the interior more so in the NFL, where maybe if it's on special teams,
I know what it is.
Those little things.
No, it just hit me what it is, because every roster needs guys like this. He is where one of the things that you and I enjoyed the most about Steve Belichick's defense this past season was the 3rd and long with, no down linemen, with all the stand-up edge rushers, where it's not necessarily going to be just in that sort of package, but that's where he's going to thrive. He's going to be somebody that comes onto the field strictly in 3rd and long scenarios to rush the passer. Now, is that going to fit on every NFL roster? No. Is every NFL roster going to want to carry somebody where it's, oh, hey, yeah, he's, 6'1", 280, and he can defend the run. He can do all these different things from the interior, but at that size, probably not. But there's going to be a scenario where he's going to work his way onto a roster because of the motor, because of the physicality, and because of the tools that he brings to the table, where somebody is going to try him out in that role, and he's going to be productive.
I somehow have a way of seeing Jedd using him on offense for a handful of plays at tight end and fullback. Like, someone's going to see that and be like, you know what? If we can play him both ways, a couple of small packages.
I wouldn't,
maybe a tush push in Philly with how you're.
I respect your line of thinking, but when I think about that at the NFL level, I think about seeing Vita Vea do it, which is just one of my favorite things. I needed to get that in there. So one more guy that you and I want to talk about, and quick shout out to Giles Jackson, Jeremiah Hunter. Really curious to see what ends up with them. We're going to have some discussions around those sort of guys as the offseason rolls along. So keep it right here on Locked On Huskies. But one guy, Lars, who I think has a really good shot at getting drafted because of the size, because of the physical profile and everything like that, is Keleki Latu.
Yes, and actually, I forgot what game it was. I think it was after the UCLA game where I asked him, just where do you feel like you've improved? Because we thought coming into the season he would be more of a red zone target, and I think just something happened in the month of September where it was just like, okay, we're just going to go a different route this year in terms of plan and execution and things like that. But you could see Keleki got better. I mean, the downfield blocking, the pass catching ability, everything was there. I think it also proved that he could stay healthy. I think that was the key for him, where it's, hey, can we depend on you for 12 games? We don't have a huge reliance on the tight end in this offense because, again, it was like half of Jedd's offense and half of just a basic playbook saying, all right, we're just going to figure this thing out on the fly here, which is fine. It was, again, foundational year. It's what are you going to do? But you look at Keleki and think, with that size especially, there's no way he doesn't find a special teams opportunity as long as he can stay healthy. And I think the fact that he did was at least promising in that regard.
So I really do believe that he's somebody who can find his way onto a roster at tight end, not just on special teams. And a lot of that is not only due to his just that size and the ability to be a threat in the red zone, but it's because we saw him not only improve after the catch as somebody who found a way to break tackles as he put on some size and just did a couple of things differently while working with Jordan Paopao, but it's also because he improved so much as a blocker. And I think that's something that can't be understated, especially at the NFL level, where, just to shout out a couple of other Jordan Paopao products, it's Drew Sample, it's Will Dissly, it's Kate Otten, who spent a couple of years with him, where those are the really important guys to look at, because they're like, especially Cade, where he's done a great job developing as a receiver in Tampa Bay, but it's the fact that they were able to block at a high level, which is what has kept them around on NFL rosters for so long. But Lars, let's switch up the football talk here a little bit, because Washington basketball has a crucial game this weekend in Minnesota. So Lars, Danny Sprinkle and co, they're headed to Minnesota. They've lost 6 in a row, and they're sitting in last place in the Big Ten right now. It has been, without a doubt, a disappointing season where, Danny Sprinkle talked about a little bit in his My Journey story that the Big Ten Network did with him. Fantastic, by the way. If anybody hasn't watched that, make sure you go check that out. But he said, we knew we were going to take some lumps this season as we started to come together. And he's talked about it over the last couple of games now, that he says this team is starting to improve. But there's a lot that I like. Having Franck Kepnang back has been really crucial. And I'm not going to set any expectations for the rest of the season here, but there is an opportunity to get back on track and find a way to play yourself into the Big Ten tournament. And that starts on Saturday.
And there's an ironic opportunity, which every fan will love, because Michigan State beat Minnesota in their last game. So they're coming off a loss. Before that, do you know who Minnesota beat?
I believe it was Michigan.
Oregon.
Oh, it was Oregon, yeah.
And then again, Michigan was the Michigan. They also did beat Michigan by 2 games prior to that. But the reason why I'm bringing this together is that you mentioned Franck Kepnang, former Oregon Duck, transferred to Washington. If he can make an impact, which I think he had a good, first little bit of spell there, didn't play a ton, but again, any minutes is good minutes with Franck. If you can beat Minnesota, and again, it's not going to be hey, this is a massive win, because again, I think we're seeing in college basketball this year that there's going to be upsets. There's going to be surprise victories. It's going to be hard to win on the road. And if you can pull off one of these victories, again, we said it a couple of days ago where Danny Sprinkle, Jedd Fisch, and Tina Langley are combined for 2 wins in the Big Ten Conference play on the road. And all 2 of those wins belong to Tina Langley. So if somebody wants to emerge as the second option on the road here, it would be Danny. And I think this is the prime art. Here's the thing. If you don't beat Minnesota on Saturday, and again, they're not going to make an excuse that it's Saturday morning at 9 a.m. local time in Seattle, noon over 11 or 12 in Minnesota. But you're looking at the schedule. After that, you got at home against Nebraska and Northwestern. Then you got Ohio State, Penn State, Rutgers, and Iowa. When is the next clear, maybe Northwestern, but when's the next clear win? And especially on the road, you're not looking at a clear road win. So if you're going to do it, this is the weekend to do it.
Well, I never want to, especially with the way the Big Ten has been this season, I would never go as far to call anything a clear win, because it's been a really just tough conference to win in. We've seen that, and I've been really impressed with, it's not like it's a shocker when Purdue came to town, that it was hard to be impressed by Purdue. That Illinois team, we got to watch them play. They were a really, really good team. So this has been a really hard month for Danny Sprinkle, for this basketball team, with the opponents that they've had to face and everything like that. Now it's going to be, how are you going to rebound from this? Is getting Franck Kepnang really that missing piece as your team has come together? They were 9 for 43 over the last 2 games of 3-point range. That's something that with a week off, I really want to see if they were able to improve on that. With now getting Franck back into the mix, I would expect him to start on Saturday. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that, just to get that energy and that defense and the ability to rebound the basketball, just a little bit more time on the floor to help set the tone early, that sort of thing. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that. But when I just look at what this team can be over the next 6 weeks, because there are 6 weeks left in the regular season, you need to find a way to get back on track, because you can do that. And this team has the ability to play really solid basketball, because we've seen it, but we just haven't seen them do that at a sustained rate and for over an extended period of time. We've seen them do it in small stretches, which has been really, really frustrating. But they have a major opportunity, and it does start on Saturday.
Yeah, well, I think the thing, though, that I take myself back, there's two things I take myself back to. One was over the summer, big picture-wise, when we had Danny Sprinkle on the podcast, and I remember mentioning, hey, when he said at the spring game, it's going to be about 3 years until we really hit the ground running here. And I'm like, really, 3? Like, you hit lightning in a bottle. So he's like, yeah, but it's not easy to hit lightning in a bottle, as we've seen this year. And then you add in the Big Ten move, which makes things even. I think that's kind of going underrated in all of this. Is you're building a brand new team in a brand new conference.
Yeah,
a lot of road games, and also the head coach has got to build everything in year one. This, if all these guys were together last year, and you're saying this is just your first year in the Big Ten, like, think about how crazy it is how both coaching changes came when it was going to the Big Ten. It was transitioning into the Big Ten. So you didn't get a running start, and then you're talking about how they built this roster. You and I both know the amount of cold calls that brought this roster together. We're talking about guys that were visiting one school one day and end up showing up on campus at Washington the next and signing. And so, and that's not to say that it was done in any nefarious way, but it's hard to build, easy, quick, sustained success that, consistently. And so you look at that, and then you think about what Danny said. We're going to be a streaky 3-point shooting team. Like, we got 3-point shooters, but Tyler Harris is going to go 4 or 5, one game, and then he's going to go 1 of 5 the next game. And then DJ Davis is going to go 0 of 7, 1 of 9, and then he's going to go 5 for 5 one game. And there's no consistency. And I think he knew that coming into the season.
The DJ Davis one is the one that, if you find a way to level that off, that changes a lot with this roster. And it kind of brings into, I think, the most important question, and just kind of a fun exercise we can do here, where let's say Washington rattles off 4 wins in a row. Who outside of Great Osobor, because we've seen him really pick up and sustain a high level of play. He's played very, very well over the last 3-4 games. You go back and look at the numbers outside of the 3-point shooting, which Danny Sprinkle did address in his last press conference since the Purdue game. Great has played at a really, really high level. So outside of him, if Washington wins their next 4 games in a row, who is the biggest reason for that?
It's a good question. I mean, part of me wants to say Tyler Harris. Part of me wants to say Franck. Part of me wants to see Tyree Iheanacho. For sure. All 3 different reasons. So Franck gives you the paint presence that offsets Great Osobor, so Great can do more things. Tyler Harris, because you and I are both fans of him. I know you've been on that train from day one. And again, not that I was against Tyler Harris. I just didn't, know how quickly it would come together. Same thing with Zoom in that regard. Tyree is the one where you're not really going to bank on the offense, but he's your defensive god. And so if you can find a way to spread his traits out and maybe add DJ Davis shooting in there somewhere, it's almost like you have all these half pieces. There's no one person aside from really Franck or Tyler Harris that I can point to and say that guy could make a massive. I mean, maybe forgetting an elephant in a room that I'll leave for you.
Well, so first I want to talk about Tyler Harris, because I think that he is one guy who really can change everything I want to see him continue to start to be more physical in the paint, where when he is consistently getting that floater from 8 to 10 feet, he's doing a great job with that. That's something that has been really, really hard to stop because of his length. And if he's able to do that consistently, that adds so much to this offense, because all of a sudden you're doing more to respect his drive. And we know he's a good 3-point shooter, so he can get more looks from out there. But I know the layup you're trying to give me here is Zoom Diallo. And it is the easy answer. And I didn't want to have to take that route, but he really would be the biggest reason why, where I know Danny has been very, very happy with the level of progress that Zoom Diallo has shown this season. And it's not just coming along as a scorer, coming along as a defender, which he said multiple times was the biggest hurdle that Zoom needed to come over. It's as a passer, and it's running the offense, and it's as a playmaker. Where as the season's gone along, we've seen Zoom start to get more and more comfortable in the offense. We've seen him start a little bit more often, which is nice to see, because that's what this team really needs, is a reliable point guard, where you're going to have that when JJ Mandequit comes in next season. But you want somebody else to, especially when you get into next year, that you can build around and really rely on. And right now that guy is Zoom Diallo. So I want to see him continue to grow in just every aspect of the game. And one thing that that Danny has stressed all season long and has really killed this team at so many different points is turnovers in key spots.
Yeah, and that's one where I mean that's everybody though. Like that's great. That's Zoom. That's
Oh,
Tyler.
absolutely.
That's like, and I because I don't want to just throw Great under the bus because there was a stretch there where he was like half for 3/4 of the entire team's turnovers, and so he's gotten that cleaned up a little bit. It hasn't been great, but getting no pun intended there, but getting better with that. And so you're thinking about if you can, even if you can cut the turnovers down by like 2 or 3. Because some of these games where they're in it, like 2 or 3 possessions, and then 1 turnover here, 1 turnover there, and now you're down 12. And that's the kind of situation Washington's been in where it's not – I mean, there's been a couple of games when they've just gotten obliterated. But for the most part, they've been there either at halftime or, midway through the second half, and then you just, for one reason or another, falter. And now you're talking about all the pieces are there. Franck is back. I mean, Chris Conway is not back. But everybody not named Chris Conway and Donovan Diamante is the ultimate question mark in all of this, where I don't expect him to do anything, but if he does, there's your bonus. I think that's how we should classify Dominic. It's
Absolutely, yeah.
Get out of him
solid
as a bonus. Like solid bonus, but don't expect anything. And it's not because you can't. I would just say, at this point, don't expect it.
It's unfair to say, all right, this guy who's just coming in off the bench hasn't seen any game action yet. It's unfair to just say, yeah, we expect this guy to jump in and contribute 15 points a game right off the bat. Yeah. I think that's certainly the way that you want to frame that. Last thing though, just to encapsulate all of this, because we talked about the highs, we talked about the lows. It's about finding the consistency, because we have not seen that in a very, very long time. The last time I think we saw them play a truly consistent game from, I think let's call it 50 minutes was, or not 50, 35 was the Wazoo game. Because we saw it for the majority of the game. It started slow, and then they came back, and especially in the second half, they did a really good job sustaining a high level of play. Haven't seen a whole lot of that since, and I'm curious to see what that's going to look like as we move forward, because they have a great opportunity here.
You're not going to count the New Jersey Tech game? You're not going to count that blowout?
No, I'm not. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all every day for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. And thank you so much for making Locked On Huskies your first listen today. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Our guy Craig Sheeman puts the Big Ten first when everyone else overlooks it. You can find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever else you listen to your podcast. Just like that's where you can find this one. So please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell. You never miss when we post a new video. If you need questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please, if it's 5-star reviews, it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.